Psychology is all around us. Psychological elements can be seen throughout the lifespan, from birth until death. Films are a wonderful tool to explain psychological theory and occurrences in our lives. Characters interact within each frame of film psychological concepts. The films we remember most and view multiple times engage us by capturing the presence of these psychological dynamics in an authentic way. Please join me today, Dr. Catherine Marshall Woods, licensed clinical psychologist and film consultant, and my guest today, Mr. Randall Dottin, speaking about his episodic project Mine on the best psychology of film. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Best Psychology in Film. Today, we have the wonderful privilege of speaking with Randall Dottin, who is working on a project called Mine. This is a wonderful animation, which, our show doesn't necessarily quite often. So I'm hopeful that this will be an episode that is well received as well as Randall, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Why don't you tell us about Mine?
Sure. So Mine is an animated series that's about this kind of post-apocalyptic Afrofuturistic world where they basically run their lifestyle on a supernatural water source that they founded, years and years after a climate disaster. And what happens during the course, of the story is that suddenly the supernatural water source that basically powers everything from lifestyle to appliances and it creates healing. Essentially what happens is that this supernatural water source starts to disappear. And when it disappears, it's up to a teenager to learn how to lead so they can save their community. So that's what Mine is about. And Mine, I should also say that Mine is one of the projects of the Rise Home Stories collective. And Rise Home is a collaboration between multimedia storytellers and social justice advocates who are seeking to change our relationship to land, home, and race by transforming the stories that we tell about them. And so all of these projects, all these 5 projects deal with issues around abundance versus scarcity, which deals with, issues around the individual versus community, which, really deals with questions around questioning leadership and ultimately creating a future that we all deserve. And so there are 5 projects. There's a children's book called Alejandria Fights Back. There's an interactive web experience called Steel Estate. There's a video game called Dots Home. There's a podcast called But Next Time. And there's also Mine, which is the animated series. So just wanted to kind of give a quick plug on Rise Home Stories because that's why I'm here. It's because of Rise Home.
Yes. Well, why don't we give the audience an opportunity to see a clip of Mine so then we can jump in to speak about it because there's a lot of about. So we'll be right back.
It all started with the water. The world as we knew it was gone, consumed by flood, followed by drought. But then the water spoke to us. And gave us a second chance. We took care of the water, and the water took care of us. The water allowed us to build a new community from the ground up. We called it Bovoda, beautiful water. Water delivery is so crucial to powering our community that it's an actual job. The water bearer. The water bearer.
You're late for your last delivery, apprentice.
A bunch of new families just arrived to watch the orientation film. The projector's acting up, and Pedro asked me to take a look at it because he went...
It's not your job to fix everything, but it is your job to deliver water. Look, final chance to ask me questions before your inauguration.
I got this.
Uh-huh. Okay. We'll see about that.
Okay. This is, again, a compelling experience when watching this episode and the clip even. Tell us a little bit about why mine is an important story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think mine is a really important story to tell, because mine inspires us to ask questions about leadership, to ask questions about what we need, to be able to run a society, that thrives as opposed to just survives. And it asks us to question the whole idea, that eventually we're going to run out of things like resources. So there's always a lot of kind of chatter and arguments that are kind of going on throughout society and in our world about the whole idea that we can't, for example, have immigrants come into our country, new immigrants come into our country because we don't have enough resources, and that's not true. When COVID happened, there were situations where people wondered how we were going to take care, of all these sick people. And we found a way, we found resources, we found money to be able to do that. And, at least for a period of time, child poverty in this country was cut in half. There are ways to do things like, to save our environment. And so I think mine brings up these kind of conventional narratives that we're all used to hearing, about what's possible and what's not possible, and inspires us to ask these questions so that we're able to see that, what we have the resources, we can live in a spirit of abundance because we can find ways for everybody to benefit from what the world has to give.
It's interesting when you say and describe why this story is important to share with our communities is that, there's also this understanding that when something is appearing to be in scarcity, how much we honor it more. I mean, in this episode and in this project, it shows how the water source, this magical water source, is like really almost like the communal belief or like what brings this community together, because it creates so much resources for other things like electric power and things of sort. And so it's almost as if this is such a scarcity, then we may actually elevate it more as well. Mm-hmm. And so when there's a threat to that, what does that look like for the people in the community?
Yeah, right. I mean, well, I think that it's important to look at our resources, every resource we have, as things that are very precious, and things that we don't take for granted. And I definitely think that water, is one of them. I mean, it's one of our most precious resources, not the most precious resource that we have. Because if we don't drink water, if we go days without water, we're literally going to die, and so it's a situation where it's really precious, and we have to find out ways to make sure that we preserve it, to make sure that people don't go without, and to make sure that we use it in responsible ways.
You've mentioned the necessity of looking at leadership, and within mine, you and your team have a teenager becoming a leader. Mm-hmm. And I wondered what that may have been inspired by.
I mean, I think it's always, our teenager Blaze is 16 years old, and I think that in every society, it's always the young people who have the potential to be the biggest drivers of change. whether it's here in this country, with, Black Lives Matter. There are, hundreds of groups centered around gun, control and being able to use guns responsibly, in our society. In Europe, there's Greta Thunberg, who's this incredible, climate activist. And so we recognize the whole idea that young people have in the past, in the present, and in the future have such an important role to play, and how society holds a mirror up to itself, and chooses to reflect on the things that it's doing that are working, and the things that are not working. And to be able to drive that change that we so desperately need, it's often the young people who are at the forefront of that. And so it's a reflection, kind of like of what we know and what we've experienced as creators. But it's also intentional and purposeful. We want to be able to inspire young people to continue to take risks and be beacons for change.
We have to stop for a commercial, but I want us to pick up, if we might, right there about being a beacon of change. So when we come back, we'll continue to speak with Randall regarding his project Mine. We'll be back in a moment.
I do love what I do for a living. I never dreamed that having this career was possible until I came to UDC. I met a professor when I decided to finish up my degree program. She told me, hey, why don't you go an intern on Capitol Hill? The internship led to being a staffer. I would have never been opened up to that opportunity if that professor would have never urged me and said, I see something in you. My UDC experience changed my life. UDC helped me find my possible.
Find your possible. Visit udc.edu/possible to learn more.
Today, we're here to speak to Randall Dottin regarding his project Mine, which is an animated episodic experience that is a wonderful show of how individuals understand our resources, how we use our natural resources, and leadership. Welcome back. Thank you again for coming.
Of course.
A beacon of change. That's what we're left off speaking about, and how adolescents, young voices are usually at the forefront of being able to move the needles in ways that maybe older generations may not be able to move the needle as much any longer, or have the motivation, or all of the factors that go into what makes it difficult once you have a lot of responsibilities and things of sort of being an adult. And we see that the main character, Blaze, has a tension that she has to make some decisions of whether or not she'll follow the generation of the past and the leadership, the individuals that are not just her elders, but also who are educationally sound as scholars of science, and whether she will take some, like you mentioned, some risks. And I wonder what you feel the audience can take from that regarding how much do we take into mind the elders' views, the scientists' views, and then our own personal views to make change?
Oh, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think that Blaze takes into account the relationship that they have. Blaze is, I should have mentioned earlier, Blaze is non-binary. So Blaze is taking into account the relationship that they have with elders. They take into account the relationship that they have with their family, with their younger sibling, Mia. And they also take into account just the work, that they've done, the experience that they've had to ultimately reflect, on themselves and what kind of decision they should make. And so I think that Blaze pays attention to everything that's going on around them, in order to kind of gather data to be able to make the best choice that they can make at that moment. And the best choice that's kind of based on the set of values that they hold dear, and that they've kind of grown up believing. And so I think that's the process that I think Blaze takes during the course of it. Because I think that it's important that we consider our elders. I think it's important that we consider history. I think it's important that we consider our, experience. And I think ultimately, it's most important that after we take all this kind of stimuli and information from the environment, that we make a decision that feels best to us based on the information available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it almost sounds like there is an understanding or even a realization that sometimes whatever that decision might be may not be a popular decision to make, but that is part of being a leader. That's part of moving that needle forward in a different way that may have never been conceptualized otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like being a leader. Being a leader means that, there are times when you make decisions that people are not going to like. Being a leader is about making decisions that, that might not be popular. Being a leader is about being able to know that the choices that you make, will have people coming at you from all different sides. But, you do your best to stand your ground, and to stand tall on the decisions that you've made, because you know that you've gone through a process to come to that decision. And just being able to just kind of like listen to your gut. I think that in, mine, Blaze senses that something just doesn't seem right. There's something that's wrong. And by the end of the episode, that instinct, that gut instinct, that told Blaze that something is wrong, it kind of pays off. I mean, I think that I've heard from many, many different places that, our inspiration that comes to us normally comes to us in a whisper. It normally comes to us, in a situation where it's very, very quiet. And we get, a whiff of it, and then we have to do the work to kind of understand why that insight came into our consciousness, and then we got to be able to act on it. And I think that's what happens to Blaze, is that there's this whisper, from their gut that's like, what there needs to be, we have to do something differently, in this case, and that's what causes Blaze to act.
I agree with you. And I want to highlight, for Blaze, it isn't just seen of, I have this whisper, I'm going to listen. There's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of self-questioning that goes into it. There's a wondering of, am I hearing or am I following this? Am I overreacting? All of uncertainties do come to mind, and your character provides that nuance for Blaze to say that it isn't just as easy as hearing the whisper and then you finally know what to do and you act. It does come with all of these other variables that make you question whether you should move forward. And if you then still move forward, then you have the opportunity for the payoff like Blaze has.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, like you said, it's not easy. It's like, once you get that insight, you must engage in the work. You must engage in the work necessary to achieve the outcome that you want to achieve. And just because you get that insight doesn't mean that your insecurity goes away, that your fear goes away, that obstacles to getting whatever it is you want, goes away. And it's at these moments where it's important to really understand that, courage isn't really the absence of fear. It's not when fear disappears. Courage really, the mastery of fear. It's the whole idea that you understand that you do have fears and you experience those fears, but your choice to have courage is all about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm going to act despite the fears.
So this title, Mine, I have some thoughts about it. I'm wondering where this title originates for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it operates on a couple of different levels. One level is certainly that after in the beginning of the story, most of the world, or a large part of the world, is waterless. They don't have water, and that's why the population has decreased considerably. But the group of scientists and of advocates that found the water find it in a mine. So that's part of the reason why it's called Mine. But then, the whole idea of mine also points to the theme of abundance versus scarcity. And, the whole idea that when you operate, off of a scarcity mindset, the whole idea of mine, what's yours, what you hold on to, the whole idea of possession becomes something that's more important to people, and often to their detriment, or at the very least to the detriment of the community. And so, it's operating on both of those kind of levels. As the story kind of goes forward, I can't divulge too much, but I will say that one of the things that happens is that when people start to lack water, they start to operate with an intense and an extreme scarcity mindset, where they're hoarding, the possessions that they won't be able to take with them anyway. And so the whole idea of the title becomes that much more important and prescient as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we're wrapping up with time, but I do ask most individuals who guest on the show a question to conclude, and I will ask you the same. Do you believe film, or even such a project as Mine, has the ability or capacity to heal?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I believe there's nothing more powerful in the world than a good story. Stories have the opportunity to challenge people, to inspire people, to provoke them, to make them question their values, as well as to heal people. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm a storyteller, because I am someone who has been, over the years, since I was young, really, really young, just galvanized and just, completely inspired by what stories can do. Stories in the form of music, have the ability to put us in a great mood. They have stories have the ability to comfort us. Stories have the ability to make us feel that we're not alone in this world. And that's why I think it's very, very important to tell stories, is because, you never know who's listening. You never know who's affected. You never know who you can make a connection with. Because when we tell stories, through the concept of creating, art, art is all about being able to connect things that seemingly are kind of disconnected. And so, stories have this profound ability to create these, moments of connection, and they create these moments of connection through emotion. And once you can connect to someone emotionally, it becomes a situation where you have the ability to change them, to have them question. And as you asked, and what I believe is that, you have an opportunity to heal. And so, yeah, that's what I'd say. And I hope that, as we continue to create episodes of mine, that people go through the process where they experience the story, where the story moves them emotionally and motivates them, but also, heals them, by seeing how people overcome the obstacles that Blaze and the rest of the community in mine go through. So, yeah.
I want to highlight the way that you describe this, of whether or not stories have the ability to heal. You also highlight have the opportunity to change and shift and modify one's psychology.
Indeed.
And so that's just a fascinating way that you just described it. Thank you for that. Because in order to get to the healing process, shifts of personality happens in the process.
Right. And it's like one of my favorite books of all time is a book called The Uses of Enchantment by Bruno Bettelheim. And, you probably know that book, but it's just like the whole idea that, this therapist used to use fairy tales to treat, young patients. And he found out that during the course of reading these fairy tales and exploring these fairy tales that he helped young people, help heal young people, but also help them to kind of build up their kind of moral and ethical, maturity as they kind of talked about and read these fairy tales. And so, the psychology, of storytelling and understanding it, I believe, is vital.
Thank you so much, Randall, for your wisdom of words, as well, in words of wisdom, both actually, as well as coming on to talk about mine. Again, it is a very entertaining episode that I watched, as well as moving. Again, once I watched it, I have to, admit, I ended up texting you and saying, like, are you kidding me? Like, what's happening next? It was just so engrossing.
Exactly.
So it leaves you right on the edge of saying, okay, what's going to happen? So it's so well done that you definitely are very much engaged emotionally in this process with Blaze.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me on.
Of course. I hope to be able to invite you on again once we get more episodes of